I'm a cell tower rigger. You've probably seen those vids on YouTube of some bloke clinging to the top of a metal tower in the middle of absolutely nowhere. That's me. It's about the best job you can get round here without a leaving cert, and the only real bit of crec to boot. Being a bit of a disaster magnet with a need for speed, I was pretty much a star candidate. All you really need is to be reasonably fit and not scared of heights, which I thought I had down, or at least I thought I did. A fortnight ago, the company I work for, who shall remain nameless, in case the suits get wind of this, sent me out to a site about 80 clicks out of town. I hardly ever have to cross county lines, but this tower was about as out in the sticks as you can get. A whopper and all. 120-odd meters, meant to ping signals across the Blue Mountains from one dinky little mining town to another. That suited me right down to the ground. I prefer working where no one can see me. For one reason, base jumping. For those who don't know, base jumping is hurling yourself off a big thing with a parachute on. Remember when you jumped off the garage roof when you were 10 with a duvet cover and broke your arm, and your stepdad came out and gave you a right bollocking before he took you to A&E? No, maybe that was just me. Anyway, base jumping is basically the grown-up version of that. Minus the broken arm and the ear bashing, hopefully. Lucky for me, secluded cell towers are perfect for this kind of hobby. The morning I was due to head out, there was a fine drizzle hanging over the gullies where I live. The locals call it Mountain Dew weather, which basically means, stay inside and get wrecked instead of going to work. As tempting as that was, I'd been hoping they'd send me out that way for months and I couldn't pass up the chance. I should have known better. Instead, I made myself a dodgy flask of coffee, chucked my gear in the back of my clapped-out ute, and you know the rest. I drove out to the site, kidding myself that the weather would clear up and it would be a sunny climb to the top. I'd packed my parachute with my other gear. I used to take a GoPro until I realized that recording the kind of stunt that would give workplace health and safety a coronary probably wasn't a smart move. I can be smart when I need to be. Anyway, I parked my ute outside the fence around the tower and punched the code into the electric gate. Someone had strung barbed wire along the top, but I doubted anyone came here much, and the wire was falling apart in places. I figured anyone who really wanted to would get around it easy enough. My suspicions were confirmed when I drove past the tiny maintenance shed in the corner of the lot and found every inch of the corrugated iron covered in graffiti. I admired it as I unlocked the padlock and grabbed one of the globes from inside. The work order said the tower needed its aircraft warning light replaced. You know, those flashing red lights that tell you there's a giant tower in the dark. I grabbed one from a dusty shelf and tucked it into my backpack, threw on my climbing harness, checked my chute one last time, and started up. The start of the climb is always boring. One hand over the other, rung by rung, you're almost impatient for the thrill of dangling hundreds of meters above the ground. Or at least I am. But you have to pace yourself. A fall from 10 meters can be just as deadly as a fall from 120, and if I was going to go out, I knew which I'd rather take. Most tower climbers clip a carabiner to each rung to secure themselves as they go. I don't bother unless it's a windy day. It wasn't. In fact, the air seemed unnaturally still as I climbed. If I were a smarter man, I might have paid more attention to the prickling at the back of my neck or the feeling of dread in my stomach. But as you've probably guessed, I'm not, so I didn't. Instead, I put it down to coffee jitters and sped up. Probably just needed a wee. Have you ever had a slash off a 120-meter object? It's as awesome as it sounds. I was about halfway up when I noticed the fog had gotten thicker, not thinner, which was weird. Usually, once you get some height and the sun starts burning off the mist, you can see fine. Usually, it's all but gone by 2 o'clock and you can jump clear from the top. I'd already picked out a nice little paddock to the southeast of the tower where I could land and have an easy walk back to the ute. But if I couldn't see it, there was a problem. I'm not mental after all. It looked like my plans were cactus for the day. The fog was so thick now that if I didn't know better, I'd think a storm was brewing. But the weather forecast hadn't mentioned any storms and there was still no wind. It was eerily silent, except for the dull clink of my boots on the rungs and my own breathing. I paused for a break halfway up. There are altitude markers painted on the tower, so you can track how far you've come, and I'd just passed 50 meters. Clipping a carabiner to the rung above me for the first time that day, I leaned back and stretched, enjoying the feeling of weightlessness. I glanced down, something the veterans tell you never to do, and that's when I saw it. Below me, shrouded in mist, a shape clung to the side of the tower. I say shape because I didn't get a clear look at it, Just a shadow, maybe 30 meters below, so far away that I couldn't even tell if it was moving. What the bloody hell? I know I'm no Shakespeare, but I reckon old Bill would have reacted the same. I mean, why would anyone be climbing a cell tower in the back blocks of New South Wales on a day like this? Anyone besides me, that is. My first thought was that it was one of the graffiti artists who, their skills being limited by the canvas of the maintenance shed, had grown a pair and climbed the tower to add a little color to the gray steel. Good on 'em. It might make for an awkward meeting when they caught up with me, but I wasn't about to call the cops or anything. I even considered hanging around until they got a bit closer, but decided against it. That was the first and only good decision I made that day. Probably the one that saved my life. I kept climbing, reasoning that if my fellow climber made it to the top while I was still there, I'd congratulate them on their courage and ask them nicely to paint over one of the lights so the company would send me out here in a month or two, and I could get my jump on. I reached the 60-meter mark and took another break, feeling the cool wet air on my cheek, scratching under my beanie. The company tells you to wear a helmet, but I figure at these heights, I'd rather my skull liquefied on impact if I fall, quick and painless. I looked down again to see how my mysterious friend was doing. It was closer. I say it, because it took my brain a few seconds to realize that the thing climbing the tower towards me wasn't human. It had closed the distance by a few dozen meters, and it was unmistakable. Its arms were too long, its body too short. I caught a glimpse of dark, glistening skin through the mist, a face twisting on a knobbly neck, two eyes that were as pale and milk-white as cataracts. I blinked. It was still there. One long arm swung over the other with unnatural grace, a hand big enough to swallow the rung curling around the steel. What the bloody hell? Again, with feeling. Now, I'm not superstitious or religious or philosophical or political or anything really. I'm a brain-dead tower climber, and when I saw the thing following me up the tower, my monkey brain took over. I scurried up the rungs, throwing caution to the wind, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Some kind of prank? A TV show, right? With a massive budget? A dozen pathetic attempts at reason flew through my mind, each as useless as the last. I climbed until I was out of breath, and my mind, looking for excuses and coming up empty, swung back to, did I really just see that? I risked a glance down. The thing was still below me, and gaining. It climbed in eerie silence, not growling or snarling like a wild animal, just the quiet, fluid determination of a predator stalking prey. I caught a flash of movement, of a snub-nosed face, of naked skin, and a mouth full of black teeth. I gave an old junkie some shrapnel once, and she flashed me a rotten grin full of teeth like that. There was only one way down now, and that was up. I climbed as fast as I could, throwing caution to the wind. The 90-meter mark passed in a blur. 110. I was flagging, every breath burning in my lungs. I could taste metal in my mouth, and my eyes were blurry. I started getting clumsy. I missed a rung with my foot, almost falling. I clung there, terrified that I'd feel long fingers close around my foot. I kicked the rungs, then managed to get my boots back in place and kept going. I reached the tower's top platform. The trapdoor was locked, secured with a padlock. Of course it was locked. I tore off a glove with my teeth and let it fall, fumbling in my pocket for the key. Nothing. My whole body was seized with fear. The piss I'd been saving for the top of the tower was running down my leg. I unhooked the hammer from my tool belt and smashed the padlock. It broke open, bouncing off my arm. I shoved open the door and hauled myself through, landing on the small platform at the top like a salmon out of water. Through the grates, I could see the thing right below me. It opened its mouth, its jaw cracking open to reveal a mouth that was too wide. Inside that mouth was another mouth and another and another. I screamed. Well, I tried to scream with whatever air I had left. It sounded more like a whimper or a sob. I stood with my back to the top of the tower, watching as it moved half-hidden below me. I slung one leg over the railing at the edge of the platform and checked the straps of my parachute. The sky was gray in every direction. Endless, mind-numbing gray. Looking back, I feel like I should have had some idea where the sun was, but there was nothing. Just a field of twilight. I couldn't tell which way I was facing or where the paddock I'd planned to land in was. I'd be jumping blind into the fog. No idea where I was headed or how close I was to the ground. It was insane. It was my only option. As the creature lifted one glistening arm over the edge of the tower, ready to haul itself up and grab me, I threw myself off. Normally, this is where I let out a yell, enjoying the feel of the wind on my face, the weightlessness. This time I fell in silence, eyes full of freezing tears as the cold wind scoured my skin and hair. I had goggles around my neck to shield my face, but I forgot to put them on. I grabbed the ripcord and pulled with all I had. There was a reassuring snap of nylon against air, followed by a gut-wrenching tug, and my feet kicked out in front of me. Thankfully, instinct took over, giving my overtaxed brain a break. I glanced up and over my shoulder, wind whistling in my ears, but I could see no sign of the creature. I pulled on the steering lines, straining to see any sign of the ground. There was nothing. A few long moments passed. Then I caught sight of a tree poking through the mist. Another followed, then another, and I was sailing between them, branches slapping my face, battering my arms and legs. I flew free of the trees and straight into the side of the fence at the base of the tower. Barbed wire slashed my hands as I hit the top of the fence with enough force to knock the wind out of me. I fell backwards, landing in the dirt, shredded nylon billowing down to cover my face. I struggled free of the remains of my chute and unbuckled the pack, leaving it all in a heap by the fence. I limped to the ute. Above, I could see no sign of the creature. I threw the door open and started the engine, praying that the dodgy spark plug I'd been meaning to replace for months would do me this one last solid. The engine coughed to life. Something flew overhead. A blur. I caught sight of long limbs spread wide, of membranous wings billowing in the sky. Eyes locked on mine as the predator glided silently overhead. Banking, turning towards me, I threw the ute into reverse, tires spinning in the loose dirt. My head bounced off the headrest as I crashed through the gate. Then I was off, bouncing down the gravel road. I didn't stop driving until I got home. Autopilot must have kicked in because I drove myself to the ER. They must have thought I was some kind of loony, eyes wide, stride soaked with urine. They had to peel my fingers from the bloody steering wheel before they could get me inside. It's been a fortnight now, and the stitches across my arms and hands are only just healing. I'll have the scars for the rest of my life. I'm writing this with the doors locked and my stepdad's old shotgun leaned against the desk next to me. I should get a dog, maybe two. The mist is back, and somehow the mountains just don't feel as safe as they used to. The screen of my phone just lit up. A text from the company. Another job. Another site I don't think I'll answer.